Welcome to the UK news on October 1st in 2021. And of course, even today, we have to start with the fuel crisis. In the fight against the rampant fuel shortage at British petrol pumps, the government in London is now mobilizing. We have decided to do it, and I think that in the next few days people will see some soldiers driving tankers, said the British Economy Minister Kwasi Kwarteng on Wednesday to the BBC. The government announced on Tuesday that soldiers would soon take over the controls of tankers and that the army would be on standby. 150 soldiers are already being trained in driving and refueling fuel trucks. Another 150 soldiers were ready. The government ordered the military to be deployed on Monday evening because of the petrol crisis. Long queues had formed in front of British petrol stations since last week. The reason for the chaos are just delivery problems. The country is short of tens of thousands of truck drivers as a result of Brexit and the corona pandemic, but not short of fuel. The government, on the other hand, primarily blamed the panic purchases. The driver shortage also had an impact on deliveries to other areas on the island. There was a lack of food and drinks in supermarkets, fast food restaurants and pubs. To resolve the crisis, the government decided on the weekend to temporarily relax the visa requirements for foreign truck drivers and skilled workers from other industries. This is a clear departure from Prime Minister Boris Johnson's restrictive immigration policy that he has pursued since leaving the EU. According to Kwarteng, the situation is now easing. The Petrol Retailers Association, the PRA, also reported, according to the BBC, that there are signs that the pressure is easing. Only around 40% of the member companies' petrol stations in the country are now on dry land. On Sunday, that was still the case with 2/3, and later I heard about 90%. But now let's talk about consequences. The fuel is running out, the supermarket shelves are empty. This is not how the Brexit voters imagine life outside the EU. During the Brexit campaign, prominent supporters of the UK's exit from the EU, the most prominent is now Prime Minister, stood out by attributing a fairy tale effect to this move. Possible negative consequences were downplayed. Regardless, the majority of voters back then voted for regaining control over their own borders. Now they are experiencing, and not just the Northern Irish in particular as before, that the exit has a price. We talked about this. Gas stations are running out of gas, shelves in supermarkets are empty. But why is that? In large part because there are no foreign drivers who left the country or had to leave the country after Brexit. Now the government even wants to use soldiers as drivers, as I said. That has something of an emergency measure and is further proof that it makes a big difference whether you belong to the internal market or not. That was also the reason why the then Prime Minister May was open to continued membership in the big market during the exit negotiations. As is well known, it failed due to the resistance of the Brexiteers, whose victim it was. But the bill is paid by the citizens, those who fell for the Brexit propaganda as well as those who voted against the exit. So they are united in waiting for a few liters of fuel and inspecting empty shelves. And now let's talk about immigration. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has defended the end of the free movement for workers with Brexit amid the acute truck driver shortage and fuel crisis in the country. I don't think people in this country want to solve all problems with uncontrolled immigration again, Johnson said in a video message on Tuesday. We tried that for 20 years, maybe even longer. But this is not the way Great Britain should develop and grow. The free movement of workers will end with Brexit, and it did. Expensive visa procedures are now usually necessary for workers from the EU. In the UK, many petrol stations are currently running dry, and the background to this is the lack of truck drivers. And you know that it already led to gaps in supermarket shelves as well. And since some petrol stations had to close last week due to the shortage of drivers, there has been panic buying. Long queues formed in front of the petrol stations. And to remedy this on a short term, the British government had promised several thousand short-term visas over the weekend, with which foreign drivers should bridge the time until Christmas, so that the British do not stand in front of empty shelves and petrol stations at Christmas. However, criticism has already come from the EU. For a few months it would be hard to find drivers, it was said, with a few exceptions I'll talk about later. However, Johnson assured on Tuesday that there were first signs of relaxation at the petrol stations. The driver shortage is a global problem that can be traced back to the fact that the economy is picking up again everywhere and demand is high. In other countries, however, such extreme effects as in the UK have not been observed so far, and freedom of movement is there quite an advantage. But let's talk about something I call the request. The European Union, Britain and Italy have urged Russia to commit to reach net zero carbon dioxide emissions by 2050 and step up its plans to tackle climate change ahead of the COP26 summit that will happen in Scotland, in Glasgow. Russia, one of the biggest polluters that has not set a net zero emissions target, is coming under increased pressure as world leaders prepare for the United Nations COP26 summit, which runs from October 31st to November 12th in Glasgow in Scotland. We invite Russia to make even more ambitious commitments to achieve zero net carbon emissions by 2050, joining us and many other countries that have already stated similar goals. The EU, Britain and Italy's ambassadors to Russia said in a joint article published in the Kommersant newspaper. The COP26 summit is seen as a crucial chance to wring out ambitious enough commitments from governments to stop global warming spiraling beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius, the limit that scientists say would avoid the worst impacts of climate change. The ambassadors urged Russia to seize this opportunity to develop renewable energy, green technologies, and protect carbon-consuming forests to help boost its economy and create jobs in low-carbon sectors. Russia is a major producer of oil and gas, fossil fuels that, when combusted, produce the greenhouse gas emissions driving climate change. Failure to rein in climate change would worsen impacts such as the devastating wildfires and also the floods that Russia experienced this summer. And the ambassadors also said that, adding that governments must work together to tackle the problem. Russia has said it will cut its 2030 emissions to 70% of 1990 levels, a target it is expected to achieve because of deindustrialization since the Soviet Union broke up in 1991. Campaigners have said that goal could actually allow the country to increase its emissions by 2030 when compared with today's levels. So, nice trick there. And then there's something I said I would talk about later, as I called it tempted. For 32-year-old Romanian international truck driver Nikolai, Britain's driver crisis could be just what he needs to keep his small business afloat. Britain's shortage of about 100,000 truck drivers, the result of workers leaving the industry, Brexit and the pandemic, has caused havoc with supply chains, with gas station pumps running dry in cities across the country and the supermarket shelves. In response, the British government plans to issue temporary visas for 5,000 foreign truck drivers, as I said earlier, to help with the shortfall, as well as using the army to drive fuel trucks. The Brits' offer is attractive, said Nikolai, who owns 3 trucks and whose business could face a squeeze from a tax levied on drivers' daily allowances in Romania. For me, taxing our daily allowance means bankruptcy because transport-related profits are pretty modest, he said. Britain is an option. Earnings there are way higher. Nikolai and about 100 other drivers on Wednesday parked their trucks in Victoria Square in Bucharest outside government buildings, with horns blaring to protest against the tax and the spiraling prices for mandatory insurance policies. Romania's tax watchdog earlier this year decided to treat drivers' daily allowances as taxable income and also to tax transport firms retroactively over 5 years on the allowances. Radu Dinescu, Secretary General of the UNTRR National Association of Transport Employers, said on average a driver could end up paying up to 90,000 euros in back taxes. Late on Tuesday, ahead of the protest, the ruling Liberal Party unveiled a draft bill to scrap the back tax payment, but this measure may stumble in the country's fragmented legislature. Other drivers, including some who are close to retirement, said the higher pay on offer in Britain was tempting. 61-year-old Gabriel Basga said, "I have a younger good friend who wants to work as a trucker in England. It only takes about 1 month for all official papers to complete. Payment is very tempting there." Let's wait and see. I'm also pondering it. If per diems will impact me as more than £1,000 per year, per week in Britain, that looks good, is good money. But when he will find out it's just for 3 months and without all the visa costs, even if it's made easier now for 5,000 truck drivers, it's easier to work in Germany, in France, in Netherlands, Belgium, Denmark, wherever. I think they will rethink that situation, because in those countries not paid that badly as well. I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.